These thieves are quite the bold ones. They had just robbed 10,000 diamonds and jumped out of the window of the 1,000th floor, but it wasn't suicide, as they immediately opened a jump pack and landed safely on the ground. A few days later, a rain of diamonds was dropped in a slum. Turns out they were robbing the rich to aid the poor. Later, they robbed an airplane that was transporting currency. After pushing tons of currency down the airplane, they middle-fingered the captain and then jumped down the airplane themselves. They then catch up with the currency and cut off the strings. Tons of currency immediately flying all over the sky and falling into slums like snowflakes. Meanwhile, the robbers fell straight into the rainforest and disappeared into the thin air. Their bodies were never recovered. Since death is all but assured when you jump from 10,000 meters above, for the sake of robbing the rich to aid the poor, this seems a bit too much. Utah, an FBI agent, does not believe that the robbers are dead. Rather, it's more likely that they were trying to finish some kind of ritual. The diamond heist, the airplane robbery, and the fire at an energy company a month ago were all committed by the same group of men. They were all fans of extreme sports. The reason for all those heists was an attempt to complete the Ozaki 8. Have you ever heard of Ozaki 8? To honor the force of nature, extreme athlete Ozaki launched 8 impossible challenges. Challenges that a normal athlete could only finish one of despite trying their whole life. The legend goes that whoever managed to finish all the challenges would be able to unlock the gene lock, to reach the apex of life, and achieve nirvana. Yet none have finished all 8 challenges. Even Ozaki himself died while trying to finish the third one. Agent Utah concluded that a week before the robbing of diamonds, the robbers had achieved the birth of Sky, the first feat of the Ozaki 8, one that requires them to attempt base jumping from Mt. Everest. The robbing of a currency airplane and jumping into the rainforest was the second feat, called Awakening Earth, one that requires them to skydive into the Cave of Swallows, the largest cave in the whole world. The fire at the energy company was for the third feat, Emerging Force, to cross the Inga Rapids in Congo, the most dangerous river in the world. Apparently, these robbers were combining extreme sports with their crimes. And the next feat they aimed to achieve was the Life of Water, surfing a wave over 60 feet tall. How come Utah knows so much about extreme sports? Turns out he was an extreme athlete 7 years ago. He was most skilled at extreme driving. Once, he and his good friend challenged each other to drive across a cliff. Both of them drove fast on the mountain ridge and soon reached the cliff. Utah managed to cross to the other side with ease. But his friend was not as lucky, because he used too much force on the throttle. Utah's friend fell down the cliff, despite Utah having already grabbed his motorcycle and tried his best to pull him up. In the end, he could do nothing but witness the death of his good friend. After that, Utah decided to quit extreme sports and subsequently became an FBI agent. Where will the fourth challenge be attempted? It would be at the western coast of France. A rare wave that has not been seen for 10 years will come to this coast. The wave will be as tall as 80 feet, a chance that the robbers will not want to miss. Agent Utah's mission is to infiltrate the robbers' ranks and become an undercover agent. He can only do so by earning their trust, and naturally, the quickest way to get that would be to show his strength. Amid a wild party at the beach, the long-awaited huge wave has come. Utah rushes forward, ready to conquer it. Although a man already beat him to it and competing against the same wave is a huge taboo amongst surfers, Utah nonetheless decided to rush forth and reach the wave before that man. But the wave was too huge, so much so that Utah was smashed into the sea and fainted. The men whom Utah competed with decided to call off the challenge to save Utah. When he wakes up, Utah finds himself on a luxurious yacht. Amongst masters of extreme sports, the men who saved Utah was their head. Utah also became acquainted with the boss's sister Samsara. Falling in love with her at first sight, Utah jumped into the sea immediately after Samsara did so, which successfully earned him her love in return. Yet show-off alone is not enough to make them trust Utah. He would have to pass some more tests. Immediately after he took off his shirt, the boss started to attack Utah, one fist after another. Utah grabbed the boss and pushed him against a wall while starting to fight back. But ultimately, he was no match to the boss. Having discarded Utah, the boss turned around and left, but Utah refuses to give up. Instead, he chose to wait outside the gate. Moved by his persistence, the boss finally relents and agrees to let him join them. Soon, the fifth feat of the Ozaki 8, Life of Wind, has come. Have you ever tried wingsuit flying? These men reached the top of the Alps, where a big stone would reach the ground in mere 6 seconds.
6 seconds to fly or die.
Such is the appeal of extreme sports. Success or die. After suiting up atop a high cliff, Utah jumps down, then gets lifted up by the airflow, flies across the valleys and the forest, then dives down quickly, until finally opening the parachute and steadily landing on the ground. After this trial of life and death, the boss finally accepted Utah as one of their own. The sixth challenge, Life of Ice, is to snowboard down an unridden mountain. The icy mountains are too sharp to even walk on them. After choosing a perfect route, Yuta jumps forth ahead of everyone else, while the others immediately follow. They dive quickly amongst almost vertical mountains. A broken cliff seemed to render the challenge a failure, and the boss even announced it as such. Yet Yuta was no one to accept defeat. He jumped down regardless, despite everyone laughing at him for being a lunatic. They followed his example and jumped down as well. This is an even more perilous journey. One of their companions lost control of his equipment and flew off the cliff, and fell into the deep valley. Once again, Yuta has to witness the demise of his companion and could do nothing to stop it. He had a breakdown, kept shouting and blaming himself, thinking that the route he chose was what killed that man. The boss, however, stopped him, said that man willingly chose to follow Yuta's route, just like the rest of them all, so the life of that man is on himself as well. In the end, they find the corpse of their companion and burn it. Even so, Yuta was deeply disturbed by the demise of his companion. Was it truly worth it to risk people's lives for the Ozaki 8? Yuta asked Samsara. In return, she told her of the story of Ozaki. Turns out Ozaki didn't die during the challenge. Rather, he died after the challenge was finished. Ozaki and his companions run into whaling ships after the challenge is done. Ozaki sacrificed himself while trying to protect the whales. The surviving companion of Ozaki later became the boss, and he intended to carry on Ozaki's legacy, to rally more people to protect the earth that human lives rely on. Humans have taken more than enough from the earth, and every crime the boss and his men committed was in order to repay earth for its contributions. Soon, they have reached another cliff. This is a gold mine that has been mined for 20 years. So much so that the entire mountain has been dug from inside out. The boss then opened a chest full of explosives. He's going to blow up the gold mine and bury it under the earth once again. Very soon they caught up with a mining car, and 2 motorcycles reached the mountaintop and planted the explosives. Although the security guard managed to smash the window of the boss's car, the boss eventually knocked him down the cliff and killed him. The boss's own car, however, was also flipped, and managed to stop the racing mining car. The 2 on the motorcycles returned and handed the boss of the controller of the explosives, then left through a parachute. Just when the boss was about to press the button, Yuta grabbed the gun on the ground and revealed his true identity as an FBI agent. Yet that does not stop the boss from pressing the button anyhow. Afterward, the boss rides on his motorcycle and starts to run, with Yuta following in pursuit. After a huge sound of the explosion, the entire mountain comes crashing down upon them. The entire forest was engulfed momentarily, finally catching the boss atop a giant rock. Yuta asks the boss if he was responsible for all the previous crimes, to which he admits without hesitation. The boss then sped up his motor and tried to get rid of Yuta, but he failed. For motorcycle is what Yuta is best at. After catching the boss once again, Yuta took him down with one hit of his elbow, and pressed his gun against the boss's head. It was then that the boss told Yuta that he knew Yuta was an FBI from the very beginning. Yuta asks why then was he allowed to join them. The boss said that because he thought he and Yuta were the same kind of men. Not sure how to answer, Yuta decides to let the boss go. The police then thought of an even better idea. They froze the assets of the boss's benefactor, forcing the boss to rob a bank due to the lack of money. But the boss creatively chose to rob a bank that was located on top of a mountain. The police had long set up their ambush beforehand, and the robbers were surrounded the moment they went out. A fierce shooting started, and one of the robbers was killed instantly. The boss threw 2 smoke grenades and started to run away on his motor. Yuta shot the tire of the boss's motor, but couldn't stop the boss from jumping on the telfer. Yuta then jumped atop the telfer and managed to get inside by smashing the glass of the window, and shooting the boss to death before he could react. Yet only after taking off the dead person's mask did he realize that it was not the boss he just killed, but Samsara, the girl he loved. Saddened and angered, Yuta vowed that he would have his revenge against the boss. Now there are just 2 more challenges that the boss needs to finish. He would for sure go for the 7th feat, Master of 6 Lives, namely to free solo climb Angel Falls in Venezuela, the tallest falls in the world. This man, Yuta, is about to climb the 3,172-foot tall Angel Falls without any equipment. He arrived in a single dugout canoe while the boss and another of his underlings had already started the climbing. Climbing on the vertical cliff without any kind of protection is extremely hazardous. A single miscalculation could be disastrous, and every point of focus could be a matter of life and death. Unfortunately for the underling, his miscalculation meant he could never reach the top. After a few futile struggles, he chose to let go and let himself fall into the valley. In the end, Yuta and the boss both managed to reach the top. How many more are you willing to sacrifice to fulfill your dream? Yuta asked the boss angrily. You can't save anyone. The boss, in return, said that his dream has yet to be fulfilled. He then opened his arms and fell down to the bottom of the falls. Yuta was dragged alongside the boss when trying to catch him. Such as the 8th feat, act of ultimate trust, to perform the extreme diving and submit your life into the hands of nature completely. Fortunately, Utah survived again. He was washed ashore after diving in, managing to complete all 8 challenges, while the boss was nowhere to be seen. He thought that he could never catch the boss again, but then Utah remembered that the boss failed to accomplish the 4th feat, life of water. Considering how obsessed he was with his dream, there is no way he would leave a feat unaccomplished. Another high tide has arrived after 17 months, and the small boat of the boss showed up, just as Utah had predicted. This man is set to challenge the greatest tide that has ever existed on Earth. Utah tried to talk him out of it, said that to challenge a 98 feet high tide without protection is extremely dangerous, let alone try to do so 19 miles away from the shore. Death is all but a certainty in such case. The boss refused to listen. He will finish his life's dream. Having done all that he could, Utah has no choice but back to the helicopter, and to give the boss his final farewell. The boss drives his boat to the fastest and charged to the highest tide. Then, with a scream, he jumped down from his boat and landed on his surfboard excellently. Charging towards the tide, the boss managed to accomplish this feat. For a few seconds, then, almost immediately, he was caught by another huge tide, and was engulfed beneath it. In death, the boss repaid Mother Nature with his own body, ending his life during a challenge. This is perhaps the perfect ending the boss had always wished for. The end. The name of this movie is Point Break. Question this time: which in your opinion is the craziest extreme sport? 111 for climbing barehanded, 222 for surfing, 333 for base jumping, 444 for skiing. You can type the rest. Climbing barehanded is, in Kay's personal opinion, the most frightening one, with no protection at all. One must feel very dizzy when looking down while climbing. We have nothing but the utmost respect to those who participate in extreme sports though. Just wish they could all be a bit more careful with their lives though. If you like this one, feel free to go and watch the original movie. And alright, this is it. Remember to subscribe and leave kudos. See you guys next time. Bye.